Jack Kantola. He's been around here for quite a number of years, but he's still working from the manuals that are present within our Toastmasters. This will be speech number 5 from the Competent Communication Manual, talking about the body speaks. Our next presenter has an interest in the misconception of life. Are things always as they seem? Or are we blind to the reality of the way things are? Today, Jack will share with us a myth from a different viewpoint and how that perspective could help each of us achieve things in life we never thought possible. Jack's speech is entitled, "The Underdog or Not." Speaking for 8 to 10 minutes, help me welcome Jack Kantola.
All right. How many of you recall the story of David and Goliath from the book of Samuel in the Old Testament of the Bible? Most of us. Let me refresh you. What happened is that the Israelites were facing the Philistines in this valley east of west of Jerusalem. The Philistines were on one side of the valley, facing the Israelites who were over on the other side of the valley. Down in the bottom was a wide open area, and neither army wanted to be the first one to go down into this exposed position. So the solution that the Philistines came up with was they were going to send their most fierce warrior down there. That warrior was Goliath. Goliath was a big man. Stood about 6 foot 9 inches tall, which was about a foot higher than any of the other soldiers in the Philistine army. He was garbed in a bronze shield or armor, had a bronze headdress on his head. He carried a bronze javelin and a spear with a sharp iron head on it. And he was led down into the field of battle by his shield bearer. Marched down there in the middle of this field. He looked up at the Philistines and he said, "Send me your best warrior." And the Israelites all said, "Not me. I'm not going down there against that guy. You got to be out of your freaking mind. Go there." Well, as it happened, a young shepherd boy named David was there delivering bread and to visit his brothers. And David says, "Hey, I'll do it. It's okay. I can handle it." And King Saul says, "Are you out of your mind? You're tiny. You're a small guy. You don't have battle experience. You're willing to go down there and fight Goliath?" David said, "Yep, I'll do it." He said, "Well, wear my armor. Put some armor on at least." And David said, "I don't know how to use that stuff. I'm okay the way I am." So David proceeded into battle, picking up 5 smooth stones from the ground, put them into his pouch. He had his sling and his shepherd's staff. And he walked out there to meet Goliath. And Goliath looked at him and he says, "What? Am I a dog that you come after me with sticks? Come closer and I'll feed your flesh to the wild animals and the birds." Pretty awesome, huh? David took a smooth stone out of his pouch, put it in his sling. He slung it around about 6 times and let it go. Hit Goliath right there in the forehead. Goliath goes boom, down. Probably a little earthquake when he landed. He was so big. David goes up to him, grabs his sword, cuts off Goliath's head. The Israelites have been victorious over the Philistines. Mr. Toastmaster, most welcome guest and fellow Toastmasters. Is that a classical story of an underdog defeating a greater foe? Or is it something else? When we take a look at it a little closer, we see other things. For instance, the fact that this shepherd boy made his life protecting his herd, his flock of sheep. He did so by using that sling. That sling, he could hurl a stone and kill an animal at a distance of 50 yards. The stone, when it left that sling, was traveling at a speed of 1,350 feet per second. About half the speed of a rifle bullet leaving the muzzle of a rifle. He was accurate with this thing, so accurate that he could even hit a bird in flight, throwing a sling. Now let's take a look at the other side. Goliath, 6'9" tall. Unusual for the time. He probably suffered from a pituitary gland disease called gigantitis, which meant the side effects of gigantitis is that you're nearsighted. Sometimes you have double vision. This is borne out by the fact that he said, "You're coming at me with sticks." David had one stick, his shepherd's staff. He was led down to the field by his shield bearer, probably because he couldn't see all that well. He was also accustomed to doing hand-to-hand battle. He wasn't expecting David to hurl a stone at him. He was like a guy going to a gunfight with only a knife in his hand. It wasn't David that was the underdog. It was Goliath. Now let me share with you a story, more current story about an underdog and a Goliath, the David and Goliath story. When I was the president of Trumpeter Electronics back in the mid-90s, we decided to attack the Mexican market for our products, coaxial connectors. We were able to gain access to Telmex, the biggest telecom company, the only telecom company in Mexico, through some very clever moves like providing all our information about our company and our drawings translated into Spanish and given down there. And then we gave them 10 copies so that the guy that we met was our entry into the company, but we armed him with the necessary ammunition that he needed to be able to sell Trumpeter within his organization. That effort gained us an invitation to a meeting to discuss a change in the standard for his product. Now we were at that meeting. I sent my engineering manager and a native Mexican engineer that we had to the meeting. And there at the meeting were two Goliaths. Radial, a multi-million dollar connector company from France, and Amphenol, an American multi-million dollar connector company, way more than us. We were doing about $25 million a year at the time. There was no way, if you looked at it, that we had a chance of being able to gain that business. But, like Goliath, Amphenol and Radial were a little nearsighted. They sent their manufacturers' reps to the meeting. Manufacturing reps can't make decisions. All they can do is deliver information. We had our engineer and our Spanish-speaking native Mexican engineer with us. We were able to convince Telmex to include virtually all of our features and benefits in the specification. Then as the meeting came to a close, these reps from Radial and Amphenol had bigger and better things to do. They packed up their briefcases and left. My guys, Greg and Jose, stayed, and they asked one question, which we had discussed prior to them going down there, and that was, what is your next step? We knew what the answer was going to be. We weren't exactly ready for the response, and the guy just went crestfallen. He said, "Oh, now I got to write this spec." And Greg, my engineering manager, said, "You know, we do this all the time. You know, we can do this with our eyes closed. Let us write a rough draft for you of the specification. And then we'll just send it to you and you can take it from there." And they said, "You would do that?" And we said, "Absolutely." So we came back, we wrote the specification, again making everything to our advantage, had that specification translated into Spanish, had the drawings made, translated into Spanish, sent them hard copies in English and Spanish and copies on disc in English and Spanish. You know that within a year, we were doing an annual sales volume of Telmex of about $2 million a year. Now $2 million a year when you're doing $25 million is pretty darn good. In fact, this little David had slayed Goliath, in fact. And the way we did it was we understood that we had weapons in our armor, that the capabilities that these other companies didn't have. They were slow behemoths. They weren't able to react like we did. And through the reaction that we made, instead of cowering away from them, we were able to achieve success. And my suggestion to you this morning is that when you next time face what you think is a Goliath, don't cower and run away, but assess the skills, the abilities, the competitive advantages that you have, and exploit those advantages to your benefit, and you too can win the battle of success in your life. Mr. Toastmaster.